So this section 9b, we're going to continue with our discussion in the previous lecture, particularly about theories of deviance, some of them related to functionalism, some of them related to conflict theory, and some of them related to symbolic interactionist theory. So how do we normally control people? Well, this is the simplest social control theory, basically, right? And you'll probably see some logic in it, right? Essentially, it says there are one basic method, right? We either reward people or we punish people. Now, these are called sanctions. Sanction is when you make any kind of movement with regard to somebody's behavior, right? So whether it's positive or negative, these are both called sanctions. Even though we often use sanction in a negative sense, it also means positive. Anyway, so the idea is there are positive and negative sanctions, and also there are formal and informal. In other words, throughout everyday life, there are lots of informal sanctions. Our parents tell us things, our friends do things to us, maybe they punish us by sending us to Coventry or don't invite us over for dinner, or they reward us by giving us more attention or giving us leadership position within the group, right? So these are informal ways of punishing or rewarding people for either doing the wrong thing or doing the right thing, right? And then there are also formal sanctions. The formal sanctions are those by large groups or organizations, such as prisons, right? The police grab you, they arrest you because you broke the law, which is a formal norm, and then they take you to court and you end up in prison, right? And there are also positive sanctions, of course. Getting a regular salary could be seen as a positive sanction, getting a promotion, getting an award, getting some recognition from a formal point of view, a medal or a badge, all of these are types of sanctions. So throughout life, we're constantly being monitored and our behavior adjusted by others around us. As I said, some informally, some formally. And the point is this creates an incentive for us to internalize the norms of the societies, and it will structure our social experiences. We will end up thinking of ourselves in terms of these moments of sanction, right? Moments when we were punished, moments when we were rewarded, and we will associate that with certain types of behavior and learn those behaviors. So another more specific example of this is control theory by Hershey. And he basically started out by saying, why don't people deviate? Why do people conform most of the time? Right? Now, when you think about it, if everybody conforms, that creates a rule of behavior, but it also creates an incentive for deviance. Right? I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a line at a supermarket, and there are 20 people in line. Now, you can conform and wait in line, right? In which case you're going to have to wait, let's say, an hour for those 20 people to go through, right? Or you can deviate and cut in line at the front, right? Now the point is, the more everybody else conforms, the more benefit there is to you deviating. Because when you deviate, you're going to cut in front, you'll save a whole hour of your time, right? On the other hand, if everybody deviates, of course, there's no rule. So there's no benefit, right? Everybody's just pushing and shoving, and it's whoever's strongest is going to win. So the question is, why don't we deviate? Why don't people break the rule more? Because this is kind of like a common benefit. The rule creates an incentive for people to break the rule, but if too many people break the rule, it creates a disincentive for everybody, right? So he basically said people conform because they're embedded within the system. First of all, they're attached to social groups, right? So because of that, they don't want to upset the people around them, right? Maybe you have a job. You don't want to get your boss upset with you or your co-workers, right? Maybe you're a part of church. Well, you wouldn't want your pastor or your fellow church members to know that you cut in line at the supermarket, right? What would they think, right? Involvement. So we're involved in normal behavior. Since we stand in line, we're going to enforce that rule on others, right? So if I'm waiting in line for an hour and I see somebody cutting in front, I'm going to do something about it, right? Or at least in theory, right? So since we're involved, we're going to help enforce those norms. Third, commitment to social relationships. So the more we believe in particular relationships, the more importance we're going to give to remaining truthful to those relationships. So for example, if we have a great job, we're going to be very careful not to lose it by being seen doing something deviant, like maybe stealing paper clips or stealing from the office coffee fund or whatever, right? And also general belief in conventional values. So again, this would go back to how people are raised, maybe, or the general agreement in the cultural system. So for example, if you go to another culture, right? Let's say you go to Japan and you're supposed to take your shoes off before you go into any building, right? But you don't really believe that. You'll do it as long as people are watching you and telling you to do it. But I bet when you go to the school and there's nobody around, I just have to go in quickly to get something. You'll go in with your shoes on because you don't really believe in it, right? You think of it as something, some strange thing. You'll do it as long as other people are watching, but you don't really believe it's important. So belief in the conventional values of other people around is also very important. So basically what this means is the more committed people are, the more embedded they are to the system in these four ways, the more likely they're going to conform. Right? So let's say you have a lot of attachments, you're married, you go to church, you have a good job, you're involved in normal behavior on a regular basis, you're going out all the time, you're committed, you have a good job, you have a great spouse, you have a high level of good things, and you've been raised within the system, so you truly believe in it, your commitment and your conformity is going to be very high. On the other hand, if somebody's, let's say, homeless, or they don't have a home, they don't have a family, they don't belong in any organizations, they're unemployed, they're not involved in normal behavior on a regular basis, they don't have a high stakes job, they have a low level job, etc. And maybe they were born into a different system, different belief system, so they're not really fully committed to the dominant belief system. That person is much more likely to deviate. They have less of an incentive to conform. Right? Now, what they found when they did studies is that family and education were very important. Religion per se was not that influential, at least not in the United States. A question one might raise is, what about attachment to deviant groups? Right? And that we'll talk about later, but if you grow up as a member of a deviant subculture, that could mean that you are controlled to be more deviant. Right? Now the biggest problem with control theory, it doesn't explain deviance among the elite. Now the elite may have their own forms of deviance, and in fact they do have their own forms of deviance, and some of these have to do with different cultural belief systems. But we'll talk about that later on in a bit. Now, Merton, we talked about earlier when we talked about functionalist theories, and Merton was the guy who talked about dysfunctions, if you remember. He also came up with a theory, what he called structural strain with regard to deviance. And in this, he applies the concept of anomie. So again, remember, anomie is when the normative system no longer makes sense. So let's assume, for example, in a given society, let's assume there is a certain cultural value for success. People want to be successful, right? That's certainly true of America, right? We're all told since we were children, you're going to be successful. You're going to be a good boy. You're going to be successful. You're going to be president of the United States, right? However, we're also told that there are only certain things we can do in order to achieve those goals, right? So, for example, you're supposed to make a lot of money, but you can't just go in a bank and rob it. You can't go around beating old ladies over the head and stealing their Social Security checks, right? These are not approved, right? You're supposed to work hard and make good investments and study hard, okay? Now, okay, so that's kind of like a given. We want to be successful, and there are certain means to get to that goal, right? The goal is success, the means are how we do it. But what Merton says is there's an inequality in the access to those means, right? It's very easy to say, make good investments, child, but if you don't have any money, how are you going to invest? It's very easy to say, get a good education, but if you don't have any good schools, how are you going to get educated? It's very easy to say, work hard, but if nobody gives you a job, what's the point? Right? So he's basically saying disadvantaged people are not allowed or cannot use these means to attain the goals. So for them, they're in a situation of anomie. Right? Anomie being the means, the norms, and the values no longer connect. Right? So what can these people do? So basically, Verne says there are 5 different options. Right? So remember we had the means and the goals. The goal is to be successful. The means are the appropriate way of doing it. So one is, of course, they accept the goals, right? They still want to be successful, even though they can't do it. And they accept the means, that is the norms, even if it doesn't work for them, right? So they're working hard, but they're never going to get rich. But yet they still conform. So that's one option, basically blind conformity. They can keep conforming even if they can't succeed, right? Then there's another option, which is they reject the cultural goals, but they basically say, I don't care about being rich. I don't care about making $1 million. But they still accept the basic means. They don't deviate. So these two groups both conform, but this one fully conforms. They still believe they can obtain the values. This group no longer believes they can attain the values. That's why it's called ritualism. They just follow the norms as a ritual. They no longer question them. It's like in church. You see all the stuff going on up front. 90%, 99% of the people in church have no idea what they're doing. They don't even know most of the time what they're saying, right? But yet they go. They stand, they sit, they stand, they sit, right? Because they conform. Now, some people will reject the cultural goals and the means. They will say, I don't care about being successful, and I don't care about working hard either, right? So that's called retreatism. So this was, for example, would be the hippies of the 60s and the 70s. They said, we're going to drop out, we're going to light up, we're going to just relax. We don't care anymore. We're going to form a commune. We don't want to be successful. We don't want any part of your success-driven society, man. And we're just going to go to the woods and smoke up that stuff. And, we want to work hard, and we don't want to we just retreat. We give up. We're leaving, right? Now, the fourth option is to accept the goals. They want to be successful, but they reject the means. Now, these people, Merton calls them innovators. They create new means, new ways of becoming successful, right? So what are these new means? Basically crime, right? So I can't get rich by working hard, I'll go rob a bank. I can't get rich by investing properly because I have no money, I'll start up a drug gang, right? So innovation is actually what we would call crime. And then there's a fifth goal, or a fifth option, and here the idea is they say, well, we don't want to be successful. We're going to seek a new goal. And they're going to find new means. Instead of working hard, we're going to do something else. There is Merton called rebellion. And if you think about it, if somebody who's saying, we don't want to be successful, we want to overthrow the system. We want to change the whole value system. We want to create communism, maybe. Right? And then they have new means. Instead of working hard, they're going to get their gun and they're going to go out and start a civil war, perhaps. I don't know. Right? So the idea is that Merton is saying people who are disadvantaged, they're going to turn to these alternatives. Some people will continue to conform even though they're disadvantaged. So when you look at minority groups and things like that, you'll find most people still continue to conform. Right? But that is what you'll normally find among the poor, among minorities. This is why, Merton says, you will find here generally more people are likely to deviate. They could retreat into drug use. They might innovate by turning to crime, or they may seek to overthrow the system. Now, another theory is, we talked earlier about control theory, how there may be different groups in society controlling people in different ways. And this comes back to cultural transmission theory, or Donald Sutherland's differential association theory. And the idea of this theory is that if people grow up in different groups, they're going to learn different norms and values. Right? In other words, the norms and values of their group will be culturally transmitted. So specifically different ethnic groups may have different value systems. Therefore, they will be seen as deviant by the dominant society. Right? It also may imply something else, which means if you grow up, let's say, in a neighborhood with a high level of crime, let's say, maybe you find out about the local gangs, right? And they bring you into the gang culture, and suddenly you're being raised in a different culture, right? So you will learn deviance by associating with deviance, right? You will learn how to be deviant. In other words, deviance will become your norm, right? And you will learn those attitudes and behaviors that make you valued within the deviant community, which is now your norm, right? So basically he's saying deviant behavior is just like normal behavior. It's just as we talked about at the beginning. What is deviant is socially relative. So what's deviant from one group, by definition, may be normal for another group. So think, for example, about binge drinking, right? You go to college, people go to frats, and one way of showing how manly they are is by binge drinking. And so this, which is seen as deviant by dominant society, becomes normal and even rewarded within this subsector of society. Same thing can happen with gangs, particularly in poor or minority neighborhoods, or the same thing can happen with any type of deviant behavior you can think of. But add to this complexity is, think about, where do we put people when they commit or we think they've committed a crime? That's right, we put them in prison. In other words, we put all the deviants together and we create a deviant culture right there. Right? So people say prison is like going to college for a criminal. You find out all the best ways of doing things, and being deviant in prison is a part of the norm. It is the norm. Because if you're a criminal, you automatically have been excluded from society. You've got nothing to lose. Now, conflict theory presents another point of view, which is generally that the ruling class are going to create deviance in a way to benefit themselves. So they don't necessarily reject the other theories, but they add on this element of conflict theory. Who is the deviant? So you look, for example, this picture on this right, with this guy climbing in a window. Yeah, he looks like a deviant, right? Here he is, climbing in a window. What about this guy? Oh, he looks perfectly respectable. Nice suit, must be a good businessman, right? You notice how often con people put nice suits on? Or the people who actually are the most deviant are the ones who look the most normal? because they're hiding, right? They're hiding their deviance. So a guy named Quinney, he developed this theory of class, state, and crime. Basically, look at it this way. If the U.S. legal system is controlled by the capitalist class or the wealthy people, they have the most influence in appointing or selecting or electing whoever gets into Congress. And of course, you look in Congress, they're all millionaires, right? People would say most of them are probably criminals of one sort or another, right? But mostly white-collar criminals, right? So what they'll do is they'll make laws to punish poor people who commit crimes, right? So you have 3 strikes, you're out, boom. You steal 3 loaves of bread on 3 consecutive days, suddenly you're in prison for life, right? And then your other crimes get ignored, like what the government does, what big corporations are doing, what rich people are doing. They can get away with a lot more crime because, first of all, they're great lawyers. Secondly, people just don't believe that they're criminals, right? And thirdly, they're the ones who get to define what crime is, right? So he believed that there were types of predatory crime that were the area of the white collar, the wealthy. They try to steal from other people, but in a secret way. Then you have personal crime, which is when one person bangs another on the head and steals their wallet, right? And then crimes of resistance, which is when people fight back, right? They protest or they raise issues, right? Or they refuse to pay their taxes, right? So the point there he's making is that the legal system puts almost all the attention on personal crime and crimes of resistance. Predatory crime is there, but it's ignored for the most part by the legal system. At least that's his argument. Spitzer, very similar Marxist theory of deviance. In fact, this theory and the Quinney theory are very similar, but basically Spitzer emphasizes more that the people who tend to get punished the most are people who interfere with capitalism, people who cannot or will not work. So who ends up going to prison? People who are unemployed, people who are homeless, poor people, minorities, people who resist authority. So anybody, the fastest way to get into prison is to argue with a police officer, right? Or resist their authority in any way, because they are trained to impose their authority. That's what they're told they're supposed to do. And frankly, I don't think that's correct. I don't think that's the role of the police. But that is 99% of the time the way the police are trained to think. They're trained to think of controlling situations, right? So that means anybody who resists authority, they're going to be like, boom, right? Anybody who directly challenges the status quo. So, for example, white-collar crime. A lot of white-collar crime happens. We'll talk about this more in the next lecture. But it's very rarely punished for a number of reasons, right? First of all, most companies don't want to admit that they've been robbed by their own employees. They make it look bad, right? If you go to your bank and you find out your bank just got robbed $100 million by their own employee, you might take your money out of that bank. You might think, my money is not very safe in that bank, right? Corporate crime. When corporations commit crime, it's very hard to tell even who's to blame. The corporation can't be blamed. It has limited liability, like we talked about in the last lecture. You can't blame the shareholders. They're just shareholders. They have nothing to do with how the corporations run. If you try to grab the officials, they'd be like, well, we were just doing our job, right? Organized crime, this is when a business supplies illegal goods or services on a regular basis. Yes, very often this is like mafias, they get shut down. But again, it's so easy for these types of activities to become normalized, accepted through payment of bribes or through hiding their activities behind a legitimate front, right? That they never end up getting penalized. Symbolic interaction is the last theory, and in some ways the most important, unfortunately, because we're running out of time. But we talk about in crime are more of these issues. But again, go back to the point. Deviance is socially defined. No act is inherently criminal or deviant. So basically, symbolic interactionism, which is put together by Lemert, Becker, and Erickson, says, what happens when somebody becomes labeled as a criminal? It's a process. So usually it starts by them being arrested for some reason and being said, you're a deviant. Now let's take an example. Let's say you steal a bag of chips, or crisps as they call in England, right? Now I grew up in England, and I gotta tell you, I stole some bags of crisps. In fact, I would guarantee that every child at some point in their life steals something from a store, if only because they're told, I dare you, right? I dare you to steal a bag of chips. And they're like, oh, I don't want people to think I'm a scaredy cat, right? So what do? They go steal a bag of chips. And I say, I was never caught. But some people are caught, right? Now let's say you have two kids. One is caught from stealing a bag of chips. He goes before the police officer. He goes to the magistrate. Nothing serious is going to happen, but he's going to be labeled. He's going to have a label put on his file that says, this kid steals chips. And if he steals chips, maybe he can do other stuff, right? Me, on the other hand, I go through there and I didn't get caught, so everybody thinks I'm a good kid, sweet little Dr. John. Right? So what happens the next time you come in contact with a police officer? This guy, everybody knows he's deviant, he stole chips. So the police officer says, there's a wallet missing. And there's Dr. John, I never steal anything. And this guy said, he stole a bag of chips the other day. Oh, must be him. Boom. So you see how the process works, right? In a very simple form. So you have primary deviance, which says basically everybody does this, but only some people are labeled. Now, when we talk about race or stratification, again, it's very important to notice poverty and minority status and others. Other attributes that make you seem different are going to be a part of that label. So, when a black kid and a white kid walk into the store, most shop owners are going to be watching the black kid. So if he steals a bag of chips, he's going to get caught. I steal a bag of chips, well, they're watching the black kid, so they don't see me, right? So he then ends up being labeled, oh, you bad boy, you stole some chips. Oh, you're a deviant, right? And every time anything comes up, they're going to be like, oh, here's the deviant right there. It must be him, right? And they're going to be like, oh, can be Mr. Dr. John. He's so good, right? So this then creates secondary deviance because as he creates a label, first of all, psychologically, he'll think to himself, I'm deviant. And secondly, he will not have other options. He won't be able to get a job. Nobody will trust him. So at the end of the day, he was forced into deviance. Right? So like I said, there are similarities here to conflict theory because symbolic interactionism, labeling theory, emphasizes how typically minorities and the poor are going to be labeled, and therefore it's them who are going to suffer this process much more often than people in the dominant group. Right? On the other hand, it also shares, you'll notice a number of these different theories share different ideas, the concept of how we think of ourselves, and then you go back to symbolic interactionism and socialization theory. So basically, again, they're saying like differential association, people become socialized into thinking of themselves as deviant. All right. So, like to thank you very much. We'll be talking about crime in the next lecture. So we'll be expanding this conversation in some directions. And thank you very much for participating. You have a great day. Bye.